All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Isselbacher, and I'm the director of the Healthcare Transformation Lab. And on behalf of the entire lab team, I want to welcome all of you to the Novelline Speaker Series. For those of you who don't know, the Novelline Speaker Series is a quarterly series of talks in which we invite speakers from a variety of fields to come and share their experiences and insight in healthcare with us to try to shape innovation and transformation here at MGH. So I'm very pleased today to introduce the speaker for this session of the Novelline Speaker Series, Chris McCarthy. Chris is the director of the Kaiser Permanente Innovation Consultancy and the founding director of the Innovation Learning Network. Chris has actually come home to Massachusetts. He's a native of Springfield, and he then received his master's in public health and health policy from UMass Amherst. His first job afterwards was out at Kaiser Permanente, where he was asked to leverage digital technology tools to provide better care for their diabetic population. So that was his inoculation into healthcare delivery and innovation. After a time at Kaiser, Chris decided it would be wise to pursue an MBA. He did the first half at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in New York State, and then the second half at Copenhagen Business School in Denmark. It was during his time in Denmark that Chris came to appreciate the value of design and design thinking, which really helped shape his future work. So after his MBA, he was invited back to Kaiser and offered the opportunity to co-create an internal design group. Chris and his group partnered for 2 years with IDEO. As many of you know, it's a renowned human-centered design and innovation group, to learn how they could bring design methods into Kaiser's organization. His group was launched in 2003, and they've implemented a major innovation in Kaiser almost every year since that time. In 2006, Chris realized that there were a number of other groups doing similar innovation and design work in healthcare, but that they were few and far between and not at all connected. So he therefore wrote and was awarded a grant to create the Innovation Learning Network, which now, 10 years later, boasts 42 member organizations, including partners and CIMIT. So please join me in welcoming Chris McCarthy, who's going to speak to us today on the power of innovation infrastructure. Chris?
Good morning, and thank you for that sweet introduction. I think inoculation is probably the best word ever used to describe my first experience in this. Remarkably, that was 20 years ago. It is just shocking to think that you can be in an organization that long and still be talking about transformation, because it is a long journey, as you all know, I'm sure. So today's talk is called The Robot and the Beast. And what we're going to go through today is a couple of versions of innovation infrastructure from Kaiser Permanente. We are in the middle of our second version, and actually not in the middle, we're in the beginning of our second version. So I'm going to share some historical stuff about what made us successful in innovation, and then why we're changing it up and why we think we need to go into a new direction. And then if we have time, I'll give you some insights from 10 years of the Innovation Learning Network on where we see innovation changing over the past 10 years. If you are tweeting, is anybody here live tweeting? Just curious. Oh, don't be embarrassed. There's some hands kind of. So my handle is @McCarthyChris, and feel free to tweet anything that I say. There's nothing that I'm going to be sharing that has not been shared in public or cleared, so we should be good to go. So as Eric said, I have this incredible opportunity to live at the 1 foot view of innovation, and that means that being at the front line, trying to bring good ideas to life and implementing them across a large system. So that real muck of doing it. And then I also get this really strange 50,000 foot view of connecting people like me. So I'm going back and forth between 1 foot, 50,000 feet, and really trying to take those lessons and connect senior executives in large healthcare organizations to the innovators and designers at the front line who are trying to make a difference. And I think sometimes that's the disconnection that we see, is that the people who are trying to innovate are very different than the people who are talking about innovation. And so I think our job is to link those two so that we all can go faster and farther. So with that, let's talk about the robot. So for me, the robot has always represented innovation in my life. As a kid, I was that kid that just worshipped Rosie the robot. Does anybody remember Rosie from the Jetsons? So I wanted Rosie. I thought she was the best thing ever. And so my life has always just represented robots. And believe it or not, robots are now entering our healthcare system. Kaiser Permanente has more and more of them roving around. Many of you probably have Roombas, so we all now really do have robots in our house, cleaning our houses. So let's be very clear about innovation. So what I mean when I say the words innovation is that it provides new value due to the introduction of a new idea to a system. Now, it's important to establish that definition because nobody else probably agrees with me. Everybody has their own definition of innovation. And that's also one of the major challenges of talking about innovation and transformation, is that it can mean very different things to different people. So one of the critical success factors that we've had at Kaiser Permanente is that we defined it very early. Thank you. So defining it early means that you are able to be very articulate and clear about when you say something is innovation or not. So in our organization, we do not throw that word around lightly. It is an innovation if it achieves this thing here, new value with a new idea. That is an innovation at Kaiser Permanente. The one other piece to this definition that I love, because I think it really applies to healthcare, is new cost avoidance. So in the new world that we're in, it's not always about capturing new market share or releasing new products. It is about dragging wasted cost out of the system, and you can equally do that with innovation. And that also hits that level of innovation at Kaiser Permanente. We're also clear about the word failure and clear about the word idea. So if an idea does not add new value, we call it a failure, and we're comfortable saying that. And until you know whether or not it's adding value or not adding value, it is just an idea or a concept. And having this articulation and this clarity vocabulary has increased the level of trust between the innovators of Kaiser Permanente and the senior executives that are trying to support innovation in the organization. So it has reduced the number of things that we call innovation in our organization, but it's increased the amount of trust across the board. So really important concept that we learned early on. So if innovation, pink, is about new ideas, then improvement is about current ideas. And I am not trying to set up warfare here. I'm not trying to set up that these things need to be opposed to each other, but we need to be able to talk comfortably about what is the difference between improvement and innovation. And for us, again, current versus new. And when we look across the system, one thing that we're looking to try to understand is how much innovation should an organization be doing? And in our organization, we think it's about 90%. 90% improvement, about 10% innovation, plus or minus 9%. So that gets us to probably what we're really doing, about 1% innovation with about 99% improvement. And I think that's okay. What we're trying to do is just be able to start painting a picture of what are our innovation activities. And in fact, we're trying to celebrate the world of improvement. So if we're in the transformation field or the innovation field, I think 10, 15 years ago, we were very much in opposition to each other. And people that were improvement were thinking they weren't sexy enough, that they were trying to innovate too, and they were trying to do good things. And I think where we are now in 2016 is that we firmly believe that each other are doing great things, and we actually need each other because there's a deep, deep connection between improvement and innovation. The other piece to this picture is that this is probably the picture of a healthy organization. If you are almost all pink, that probably means your organization is failing miserably, that you are not surviving, and that you are just grasping for straws. If you are also all pink, you may be an innovation firm, and your healthcare organization should not look like an innovation firm. You need to have ongoing clean practices, and that exists in the blue. And you're trying to shake things up occasionally in the pink. And so again, we're trying to establish language to celebrate the pink and the blue, and you should be mostly in the blue. All of your people should constantly be trying to get variance out of your system, should constantly be trying to make things better with what you have. And you only go to pink when you need to go to pink. All right, so let me try to establish for the next couple of slides this dance between innovation and improvement. So you have your current state in yellow. Doesn't matter what your current state is, that is yellow. Innovation then leaps you to the worst, best place possible. It will never take you to the best place. That's improvement's job. And this is now starting to, again, establish that dance between innovation and improvement. So once we innovate, it is the job of improvement to take what we have and make it better. And you can keep doing this over time. Once you kind of peak out of your improvement efforts, you can then leap forward again with innovation, and you're passing the ball back and forth between the innovation world and the improvement world. Those are different skill sets, those are different methodologies, and you cannot expect the same people to be able to do both. It's rare that improvement people can pull off real innovation, and it's rare that innovation people can survive in the improvement world. They're different competencies. So let me give you an example of one that you all know well. So back in 2005, we had all kinds of cell phones. Apple came out with the iPhone 1, leaped us forward to the worst, best place possible. I don't think any of you want to go back to the iPhone 1. But if you compare the iPhone 1 and the iPhone 6, you would see a very similar device. It is not that different. But notably, iPhone 6 is superior to the iPhone 1. Again, that's that dance between improvement and innovation. Let me give you an example from our organization. Back in 2003, shift change was done in every which way in our organization. Right even down to the individual nurse had their own practices on how they were going to do shift change between each other. We did an innovation project in 2003. We leaped forward to a much better system of shift change. It became standardized, it became human-centered, communication scores went up, safety went up, and it started spreading across our organization. And then for the next 7 years, we continually improved it. And over the course of that 7 years, it spread to every single unit of every single hospital of Kaiser Permanente. And it is because of the improvement activities in our organization that this system is a part of the infrastructure of how nurses do shift change in our organization. It is a standard practice, it is everywhere, and this dance has happened twice now. So we went from nurses doing it every which way to a standard practice to making that practice better and better. We innovated again, we call it Nurse Knowledge Exchange Plus, and we continue to improve that activity over and over again. This was about an 8-year experience to go back and forth twice between innovation and improvement. Okay, so now let's talk about the beast. So the beast is the organizations that we live in. So let me tell you about Kaiser Permanente if you're not familiar with the organization. We are a $62 billion organization. I think I'm off by a few billion now. I think we're about 67 now. This is from last year. 10.5 million souls that we care for. We just added 1 million new members in the past 18 months, which is a huge jump for us because we were stuck at about 9.5 million for many years. We're now up to 200,000 employees, 17,000 doctors, just big, lots of hospitals, lots of medical office building. Why I share this with you is I hope what you're getting from this number is that it is a beast. It is complex. A lot of people don't know that there's really no such thing as Kaiser Permanente. It's actually made up of lots of smaller organizations that all exclusively work together. So the doctors are Permanente and the health plan is Kaiser. The hospitals are Kaiser and the medical centers are Permanente. And so all of these relationships have their own CEOs, have their own infrastructures, and yet somehow we're able to present to the world and to our members that we are Kaiser Permanente. And it is in this complexity that we are trying to transform and innovate our organization. So how do we do that? So Innovation 1.0, this journey I'm about to share with you is a 13-year journey. It goes from 2003 to 2016, officially ending this past January. So again, I'm going to give you a bit of history here, and then we're going to leap forward to what we're trying to do right now. So back in 2003, innovation was considered an implicit activity at Kaiser Permanente. We all believed ourselves to be deeply innovative. In fact, Kaiser Permanente, as a healthcare delivery system, was an innovation on the American medical delivery system itself, started back in the 1930s about. So blasphemous was our way of doing medicine that we were banned from the AMA until 1971. So that's probably a good sign when you get banned from things, meaning you're probably provoking the system in a very appropriate way. So very much we've believed that DNA was innovation was implicitly in our DNA of how we viewed the world, how we viewed ourselves. However, that was just simply not good enough for where we wanted to go in the future. We wanted to make innovation explicit. And that means if you're going to be explicit, that you need to have infrastructure to explicitly support your ability to innovate and transform your organization. So the first thing that we did is we contracted with IDEO for a very small project. It was only supposed to be 3 weeks long. That 3 weeks became 3 months. Those 3 months became 2 years. And so 4 people in our organization and 4 people from IDEO lived and breathed together. They did nothing else except work on Kaiser Permanente. We did nothing else except work at IDEO with the intention of building an internal design and innovation infrastructure. And over the 10 years, or over the 13 years, we've stumbled very positively into these 4 categories. And I wish I could say that in the early days that we were just this brilliant strategic group and we absolutely knew that we needed the people of innovation, the space of innovation, the method of innovation, and the networks of innovation. But the reality is that the Kaiser Permanente leadership set up the opportunity for us to play. And we played and we stumbled and we created and we organically continued adding on more and more infrastructure and destroying infrastructure that was no longer needed and making more infrastructure. And where we've settled is on Innovation 1.0. And so that first piece, the first and the third, I'm going to talk about people and methods are intricately connected for us, but they're so important that we call them out. So we need the people of innovation and the methods of innovation. So let me tell you a little bit about the people first. So this is my group. We all look like X-Men floating over the ground. This is the Innovation Consultancy. It started off with 4 people back in 2003, 200,000 employees, 10 million patients, 4 people officially designated as the innovators of Kaiser Permanente. Now, a lot of other people were innovating, but we were the ones who got the title. We were the innovators. So that's about 50,000 employees per person, and I don't know, 2-3 million patients per innovator, kind of outrageous. However, over time, because we were successful in the early days, and I can tell you about how we were successful in a little bit, we had the opportunity to add more and more people to this group. And the choice we made early on, so those 4 people were from Kaiser Permanente. The next 6 people that joined the group, we hired only designers and we hired only people who had 0 healthcare experience. This was intentional. We did not want anybody from Kaiser Permanente, and we didn't want anybody that had any other lens into design other than design or other industries. because we wanted to see the world around us with fresh eyes. And so our team is broken up into these two buckets. We have design bucket and the strategy bucket. So for the design bucket, we have design researchers, industrial researchers, architecture, communication design, and user experience. So those are our designers. And the strategy bucket is everybody else who doesn't have a classical design degree. And so these are myself in public health, myself in technology, and then we have a person that we hired from Pepsi, believe it or not. They were in marketing at Pepsi. Somebody from business, we have a nurse on our team. We actually have finance on our team. Very, very multidisciplinary group, very, very big lenses to see the world of healthcare, and very little healthcare lens to look at healthcare. Intentional. Kaiser Permanente has plenty of experts on healthcare. We do not need any expertise on healthcare on our team. We will find it in our organization. A very intentional way of building a healthcare innovation team. So the methodology that we use to innovate, so again, a method for us is extraordinarily important. It's called human-centered design. And it just happens that the human-centered design or design thinking, if you look over time, tends to be a way that more and more industry is thinking about how to innovate. And so we think it's a crucial way of thinking about the world. Since 2003, if you look at a Google search, it has just increased, and I think it's going to be exponential in the next few years. It's going to pop. We were very fortunate at Kaiser Permanente that at the very beginning, before it was fully established, it allowed us an opportunity that I think most people don't have anymore, which is to play in a stealthy way. People 13 years ago didn't know what human-centered design was. They weren't really paying attention to us. Nowadays, a lot more people have their finger on that pulse. But if you don't know what human-centered design is, this is, for me, the graphic that describes it all. It really is about understanding the human experience. And so rather than innovating because of a business need or because of a technology need, we're really trying to understand the full human experience. What do people think, feel, say, and do? And we look for the disharmony between what people think and feel. And it's very often that someone will tell you something and actually feel something very, very different. Have you ever gotten that haircut and you've asked your partner, how does my hair look? And you probably know it looks like crap, but everyone around you is going to say it looks great. And in fact, this is what happens every day when in an improvement world, you go to the unit and you ask nurses or doctors, how are things working out for you? And very, very often they will say, everything is great, everything is fine. And they're often saying those words because they really want you to go away. They're really not interested in you in mucking up their world. So it is the beauty of human-centered design is that it doesn't stop at a simple asking of a question. How are you doing? How are things working out? You dig kind of into the soul, into the heart of what people are feeling, and you're trying to really understand what are their needs. And so if there's one thing you take away from this talk is that human-centered design is the entry point into many innovation methodologies, and I think it is our critical success factor at Kaiser Permanente. The other critical success factory, I wish that was success factory. Sign me up for that success factory. The other critical success factor of innovation at Kaiser Permanente is this image right here. And this is the interconnectedness of design for value and design for joy. And so I would bet you that all of you live in that side of the screen, the value side of the screen. We're all trying to make the world better. So it doesn't matter what department you're in, whether you're in legal or accounting, or you're in cardiology, or you're in cancer, your job is to make things better. What I would guess many of you don't have explicitly as a part of your philosophy is that you're here to design for joy. Now, it is our success factor because we know that when we make things more valuable and more joyful, they stick. And in fact, I know I can make it better and less joyful. In fact, I know I can implement that. And when I walk away from that, I equally know it will disappear. People will not continue to do things that add value, but they hate doing. Just kind of reality of being a human being. This allows us to ensure that when we do walk away, that people will continue to use the innovation that was developed. We never even get to the point of developing an innovation and calling it innovation if the doctor, the nurse, the patient don't feel like it adds joy to their life. The corollary of joy, the only time that we accept it not being more joyful, is if we remove pain. So it may not be joyful, but it may be a lot less painful than before, and in which case the innovation is now deemed an innovation. So our philosophy, design for value, is intermingled with design for joy. We do not separate these two things. All right, so that was the people, that was the space, the methods. Those two things are intermingled together. The third piece of our infrastructure is space. Now, I'm just curious, how many of you have innovation space in your organization here at Partners? Are you all from Partners? Yeah? Wow, only 2 people raised their hand. So the rest of you should know that there's innovation space at Partners Healthcare System. And in fact, this is very common when I give a talk similar to this. When I ask the question, is there innovation space in your organization? Almost nobody knows if that's true or not. And you should all know that there is innovation space. So innovation space is deeply important. One is it shows that there's an official commitment to the space of innovation and to doing things very differently. But the second piece of it is it allows people to be creative in ways that your current spaces just do not allow. So you need places to officially be playful. Being playful is intermingled with the innovation and design process, and it is not necessarily intermingled in our everyday healthcare facilities. In fact, it might be a put-off to many of our staff or many of our employees or even patients. And so we need these safe places to be more playful, to be more experimental, to encourage creativity. So at Kaiser Permanente, our innovation space is called the Garfield Innovation Center. It's 37,000 square feet. It has a fake home, a fake clinic, a fake hospital with all the current technology of Kaiser Permanente, some future technology, including robots that are moving around there. And it gives a team like ours a place to go and get down and dirty with building stuff. And so this is not a place to wear suits. We often wear jeans and t-shirts and sneakers. These are concrete floors, so it gets very painful if you're wearing nice shoes. And you'll see these theater sets set up everywhere. So we can quickly mock up first in cardboard, and then we move to theater set design, and then we actually build real spaces out that look like this. This is all happening inside the warehouse. One of our critical success factors of our center is that it's not precious. I get to go to a lot of innovation centers around the world, and almost every center makes the same mistake. They make it beautiful. They make it look like you can't kick the tires. And so people are afraid to try things in these innovation spaces. So as you're developing your innovation space, I encourage you to go more like this and less like this. So over time, we've increased our innovation space from 37,000 square feet to we're up to about 70,000 square feet now, spread across the entire Kaiser Permanente system. We're building small design shops and innovation spaces in all the regions of Kaiser Permanente. Small all the way down to just a few hundred square feet, large up to another 15,000, 20,000 square feet, because Kaiser Permanente believes that innovators and improvement people too need spaces like these to try new things. And so we're starting to propagate the ability to have space available whether you're in DC, Hawaii, or in San Francisco. All right, so the fourth piece of infrastructure is networking. And so in the early days, we realized that there weren't many people like us, and we needed to form a community. And in fact, in the innovation and design space, it's even more important to connect with your community folks, because you're discovering new knowledge, you're trying new things, and when there's not a lot of you, you're going to make a lot of mistakes unless you find those friends. And fortunately, Partners Healthcare System has been a friend right from the beginning for us. So as we started this talk, we told you about the Innovation Learning Network. How many of you are official members of the ILN? Wow. So, if you go to iln.org, you can sign up for free. Partners Healthcare System has been a founding member for the past 10 years, has an organizational membership, doesn't cost you anything, and you'll get about 2 to 3 emails a month sharing with you upcoming virtual sessions. We do emerging technologies once a month. So somebody around the world gets on the line and shares something that's really important to healthcare that's probably coming in the next 5 to 10 years. And then twice a month, we share innovations from across the Innovation Learning Network landscape. So part of the Innovation Learning Network is the National Health Service in England, the military health system, the VA, partners, Kaiser Permanente, Ascension, and a whole bunch of incredible design firms, foundations, again, with the idea that we need to be aware of the world around us. What do we do there? We share innovation techniques, we teach innovation technique, and we create innovation friendships. I have been coming and hanging out at Partners for about the past 10 years at Summit with Penny Ford Carlton right over there. Penny comes to California every so often. Ascension sends their people to us. Cedars-Sinai comes out here. And so because of the ILN and these innovation relationships, we are able to connect with each other. And so I encourage you, if you are in any of the ILN territories, you should contact your ILN friends. They will be happy to share their transformation and innovation stories with you if you're ever visiting their systems. And there's 42 organizations, so there are a lot. I encourage you to tap into that. All right, all of that is what we call Innovation 1.0. People, spaces, methods, and networks. It has made us one of the longest standing explicit innovation groups in healthcare. We're celebrating 14 years this year. And this has helped us, has not solved, but helped us start taming this beast a little bit. This complex organization called Kaiser Permanente that is made up of all these organizations with all these CEOs and presidents. Somehow having real infrastructure has allowed real innovation to start getting a foothold and making a difference. So I want to share with you a brief case study that brings version 1.0 to life. So back in 2006, we were given this challenge. What is the problem with giving meds in hospitals? And so as you probably know, there's all kinds of error that is involved with this activity. And so we used improvement science for many, many years, and we plateaued. We could not get any better. Plateauing with improvement science is a wonderful indicator that it's time to innovate. It means that you've peaked out on where improvement science will take you, and it's time to get experimental. So the first thing we did is reach out to the Innovation Learning Network. And we contacted many of our organizations, and Allegiant Healthcare System, Ascension Healthcare System, and Partners Healthcare System reached back and said, we would love to do an exchange. So these four organizations, in a matter of 1 month, did 4 90-minute sessions with each other. Each organization in 2006 shared the best and worst of medication administration, and each of these 4 organizations got a level of knowledge within 1 month of what, again, was the best and worst, and allowed each of these organizations to take that knowledge and apply it to their organization. So we went back to Kaiser Permanente and we asked the same question again, but we were loaded with all this incredible knowledge from the 4 systems. What is the problem with giving medications in the hospital? So we asked our nurses this question, and the nurses ubiquitously said there was no problem giving medications in our hospitals. We work really hard. We're doing the right things at the right time. We're doing the 5 rights of medication administration. We said, great, of course you guys are professionals. Of course you're working hard. So I want a little dual activity with you. I'm going to give you some crayons and some paper, and I want you to just close your eyes and imagine medication administration. Draw me a picture. And we got this picture. And in fact, we got 40 pictures that look like this, lightning bolts coming out of people's heads. One drawing was of a woman crying blood. So you said there was no problem. But when you had a chance to creatively express yourself And often through drawing and painting and collage, you're tapping into emotions. When you got a chance to draw, blood was pouring out of your eyes, lightning bolts are coming out of your head. What is going on here? And so the power of these techniques is that it's not about the picture or it's not about what they say. It's about the difference between what they said and what they drew. And this becomes a jumping point for a rich conversation. So after they drew, we spent about 30 to 40 minutes with each nurse having them tell their story about what the pictures represented. And that unlocked for us all kinds of major issues in delivering medications in the hospital. And they started bucketing around things around interrupts, around unclear processes, around unclosed loops. And it was through this discussion, and in fact, this became self-discovery, that nurses now believed there was a problem. So we just asked the question, they said no problem, but through self-discovery, now they want to be a part of the team and be a part of creating something new. So we took these newly empowered nurses, along with doctors and pharmacists, we split them in teams, and we sent them to the California Highway Patrol. We sent them to a grocery store. We sent them to the Oakland Airport flight school. And it was at flight school, talking with the instructor, that one nurse just stumbled upon a concept called Sterile Cockpit. Has anybody heard of the Sterile Cockpit? I'm seeing a few heads shake. Basically, that means from 0 feet to I think it's 14,000 feet is called the Sterile Cockpit. And that means that the pilots do nothing except take the plane off or land it. No conversation, no food breaks, no bathroom breaks. They only can land or take off the plane, and they only can have conversation about that activity. And so this nurse was like, wow, they have a sterile cockpit to do this important activity. Why, when I pass meds, is the time not sterile? It's major concept pilfered. So this is that nurse. And so we prototyped with her, and she put a smock up on her body, and she put pink paper with some tape, and it says, if you can't read it, leave me alone. Leave me alone. And this leave me alone really made people laugh. Laughter is a good thing. You might think that they're laughing at your idea, but they're making new connections in their brain, and it's novel, and it's interesting and pleasurable. And this became a major innovation for Kaiser Permanente. So nurses now wear this sash, along with several other pieces of the innovation that we now call Nurse Knowledge Exchange, and it has reduced medication errors and is 105% ROI in our organization within 2 years. So that's a great example of Innovation 1.0. What we realized when we tried implementing this across our system is that we implemented in many parts of our system, but it didn't go everywhere. It went to about 75% of our hospitals. Not bad. But we're Kaiser Permanente. Why can't we spread everywhere? And what we started realizing is that there is a disconnect between the things that we're designing and with the strategic direction of the organization. That the innovators, although we are fueled by strategy and fueled by the organization, we are not deeply connected to the strategic priorities of the organization. And so Innovation 2.0, our big aha, which maybe you all already know this aha, because maybe you're doing it, is that there is now needs to be deep alignment between the strategic focus of the organization and the strategic acceleration of our infrastructure and our ideas. So in the past 13 years, we have taken on projects that we could get money for. And that might be a pet project for someone in the organization. It may not be what the strategic priority of the organization. In the past, meaning just a few months ago, if it was a strategic priority, we may not have any innovation dollars to do the work. And so we have made a decision starting of January of this year that the pink infrastructure now is aligned with the strategy and gets dollars from the strategy. And that means that we are able to design real stuff that, in theory, will be accelerated because the dollars and it's a part of the strategic focus. The additional piece of strategic acceleration also means that everything around the innovation infrastructure also now is aligned and must participate and the spread of innovation across Kaiser Permanente. So I hope to come back to you in a couple of years from now and tell you that this is awesome and works, or I'll come back and say this was a grand experiment and it failed, and I'll come up with my next big strategic direction for this. So this is just as of January 1st this year, and we are really indeed having a grand experiment on pulling this off. So in the last few minutes I have before we open up to questions, I thought I would summarize the past 10 years of the ILN and some of the things that we've learned about innovation. So first of all, back in 2006, we were very much focused on collaboratives, and I think what's changed in the past 10 years is that most organizations are no longer that interested in solving the what, but it's the how. And we now know that method and ability is as important as the thing you want to innovate on. And it's not good enough just to have the desire to solve diabetes. You actually need to have the innovation and design know-how. So most organizations now are focusing on capability. 2006, people were always excited about technology. Technology, technology, technology. Where we are now is that it's about the total experience. So what is your architecture and your technology and your workflow and your life flow? How are those all intersecting to create the Uber experience for your physicians and your nurses and your patients? Back in 2006, we were fundamentally concerned with networking. What are our competitors doing? How can we learn more? And we've now pivoted towards friendships, that we understand that we have the same social missions and that we really have limited resources, and it's time to really start partnering and help each other achieve new and great things. In 2006, we were much more concerned about looking across healthcare. What are you doing in California? What are you doing in Boston? And what we now know is much more powerful, like that nurse going to flight school, is to look around healthcare and look across healthcare. And so our teams in the past 10 years have been partnering with NASA, with the Honolulu Zoo, with Burning Man, with Safeway, with the California Highway Patrol, with all kinds of organizations to look at how they're solving challenges and see if we can pilfer concepts from their industries to work in healthcare, like the Sterile Cockpit. What hasn't changed in 2006 and 2016 is that innovation remains constant. And in fact, if you search Google search on innovation, you will see that it has almost stayed the same. And this is actually a huge volume of searches that no matter whether you're back in 2006 or now, it is the top of mind for the executives of organizations and those who work in those organizations, because that really is the only way to get to the future. So I'm going to end my time with you again with this image. This represents human-centered design for me, but it also represents the human experience. So a lot of us are deeply concerned with being patient-centered. I will go on the record to say I don't believe in being patient-centered. I think we have to make a stance and say we must be human-centered. I believe that the physicians and the nurses and the back office people equally need to be joyful and feel like the organizations are supporting them. And in fact, we should be designing for the relationship between our caregivers and our patients. And so I think human centricity is where we need to go to. We need to give up being patient-centered just a little bit. And with that, end my time and open up for questions. Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to just start with one very basic question for you. Your team has grown from the initial 4 to 10, I believe,
Yeah.
but yet you still have a massive healthcare system. Certainly you can't service everybody's need for innovation and trying new things. How do you pick the problems? How many of them are brought to you? If so, how do you decide, choose among them? Or are you guys driving the innovation? For instance, the nurse med project, was that brought to you, or did you guys see that as a good target to start?
Yeah, so prior to January 1st of this year, so I'll give you the historical, then I'll tell you where we're headed. Problems were pitched to us, but almost always the pitched problems were the wrong problems for an innovation design team to be tackling. We were pitched a lot of improvement projects, and so even the capacity of improvement world is taxed. And so I think there was a lot of people thinking, well, let's just toss it to the innovation team. So I think another critical success factor is the ability to choose wisely. And so we were looking for projects that really had either peaked with improvement or just were failing miserably, or was a huge opportunity that nobody has tackled before. So that was one set of criteria that we looked for. The second is we were looking for universal challenges. So if a problem was brought to us that was only for one physician or for one hospital, that being a national resource for Kaiser Permanente did not meet the level of what we were looking for. But most of the projects for us came from ourselves. So all year round, we're working on innovation projects. We're doing ethnography in people's homes and in the hospital with doctors and nurses. And we started sensing, where would the next interesting project for our team be? And we would start whispering those ideas to our executives, which would then start whispering it back to us that maybe this is an area we should focus on. So it's a combination of people pitching ideas, but mostly us being in the field, really doing work to be able to bring real ideas back that we think would be most powerful for a group like ours. Now, that has worked really well for us for the past 13 years. That's done. And so we're now aligning ourselves with the strategic priorities of the organization. And so that means the CEO, CFO, COO, and Senior Strategic Officer are getting together, and with a whole host of folks from strategy are looking 3 to 5 years out and involving our team as a design research team to help them think about the future, and then pick 3 priorities that can last 3 to 5 years. That's the theory. And we're already stumbling a little bit and learning our way into that space. If we can figure that out, it saves all the bandwidth that me and my team waste looking for work, and instead take all that bandwidth and apply it directly to the strategic challenge. So again, it's a theory, and we're hoping that it proves out. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Chris, a quick follow-up on that. So if you're getting the problems or the pain points from the top, that's from the strategic level, how are you staying connected then to the front lines and all the ethnography? Are you guys going to continue being out there to sort of understand that? Because there's that disconnect.
Yeah.
As well.
So it's kind of the infinity loop, right? Where we need to take real challenges from the front line and from our patients and bring them to the highest level so they can find the strategic focus. So it does go back and forth, but that will not stop. So even though the strategic priority, and one of our strategic priorities this year that we think we're going to be settling on, and as many organizations are, is behavioral health. That seems to be every island organization I talk to that is top of mind. Even though that is a strategic priority, it still means that we now need to go right down to the front line and work with our clinicians and with our staff and with our patients, doing exactly the way I described with the design thinking process. Same work, just the difference is my bandwidth and my team's bandwidth is not sussing out new work simultaneously. We're just focused on the work itself. Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting to watch you go from Innovation 1.0 to Innovation 2.0, and some of your working techniques are similar to other strategic design groups out there, say like IDEO. As you shift and as you grow, how is your methodology becoming even more unique to Garfield and Kaiser? What shifts are you seeing in terms of working methodology?
One of the big shifts in the past 10 years, and I think this does start getting us even closer to the strategy side, is over the past 10 years, there's been a shift between the expectation to innovate versus the expectation to get smart. So there's 2 kinds of projects that we do now. I would say in the first 5 years of our existence, nobody cared about how we did it. They wanted an innovation that could be scaled across the system. That was all our executives cared about. Over the past 10 years, as our organization has gotten more comfortable with human-centered design, have gotten more comfortable with ethnography, the amount of projects that we're now asked to do that simply provide deep understanding for our executives to make better decisions has gone way up. So in fact, our big project from last year that took almost 3/4 of our resources was an exploration of the transgender care experience in our organization. And that project, we weren't asked to innovate. We were asked to help the organization better understand the full transgender care experience. And now our executives are spinning that off into all kinds of improvement and innovation activities. So I think that's a good example of that transition. I can only imagine that we'll probably get to 50-50, I would guess, starting this year, as strategy now says, well, we need help understanding the world around us. Is that helpful?
Yes,
Yeah.
that starts to talk about the evolution, that's great.
Yes.
So you were talking earlier about kind of the importance of joy in doing all this innovation work, and I was wanting to know a little bit more of when you get to that intersection of you make the leap, you've identified the joy factor within the innovation process. Is there some standardized mechanism that you use to kind of monitor joy in that improvement phase, so that you not only have like kind of process measures and stuff, but you have some sense of, okay, people are starting to get a little ticked off again.
Yeah.
What do we do from here?
Yeah. So boy, that sounded like taking the joy out of it, standardizing processes to measure joy. But thank you for that question. It in fact is on our mind. And so up until this year, they were custom metrics for every innovation or every concept that we were testing. Because we just didn't have the sophistication to do, I think, what you're asking. So very, very custom. And it really centered around satisfaction. And we'd even asked the joy question. Does this idea add joy to your work life? Or does it take pain away? We would measure that as well. There's a concept now that we're moving towards, which is called metrics that matter. And a lot of organizations are starting to talk about that. And even one step bigger than that is experiential metrics. And healthcare organizations, we are the worst at experience metrics. There are many industries that are good at experience metrics. And so we're starting to look to other industries to guide us in that. There's a lot of small startup healthcare companies that are focused on experience metrics. One Medical in San Francisco, they're doing a decent job of it. We have not implemented standard joy metrics yet. It is on our mind as we're moving to our next version 2.0. Up to now, it's been custom for every single concept. Yeah.
Sarah?
Hi, Chris. Thank you for the talk. I'm curious if you can comment on how you partner with other innovative groups within Kaiser. I know there's the Permanente Institute, there are also some Garfield.
Yeah.
The MGH partners like you has many groups involved in this. So
Yeah.
however we can learn from you about how we can work together.
Yeah. So in the past 13 years, there's been several innovation groups that have started up since my team. Innovation Advanced Technology out of IT, they are our future sensing group, and the Garfield Center is the space of innovation. So actually just this year, as a part of our strategic focus, we've aligned all the innovation groups under one umbrella. And so that although we've been in a consortium together for the past 10 years, we now officially have the same boss, so that makes life a little easier. And Care Management Institute, we actually now have official dotted lines to the CMI. If you're not going to be serious about strategic focus, and I think sometimes that's okay, it was actually very good for us in the first 13 years. I think often organizations who are starting up these innovation activities, they immediately go to solving world hunger. And immediately they fizzle out because they don't have the chops, they don't have the experience, they don't have the know-how to navigate. How do you navigate playfulness and creativity at the front line? If you can't answer those kinds of questions yet, you're not ready to tackle world hunger. And so we've had 13 years to build our capabilities and our confidence. And I think now is a good time for us to be able to align ourselves and really take on those super uber challenges. But the journey that I see most organizations do is they start with that. And so we've been very fortunate that we didn't, but now it's time for us to do that.
Yes.
What are some of those industries that have actually that are like some of the leaders in experience metrics that you want to look towards to see?
Yeah. Oh boy. Organizations are leaders in experience metrics. Well, the airlines are really constantly monitoring this stuff, and we all know that some of them are terrible and some of them are awesome. There's a lot of commercial, like Amazon and those organizations that are actively monitoring how people are thinking and feeling with the interaction. In fact, so sophisticated that they're able to make micro adjustments based on satisfaction. So that's the kind of, I think that's the sophisticated level that we would love to be able to get to, is to react. I mean, what are our HEDIS scores and our HCAP scores are so far lagged and so bundled that at a micro level it can be very hard to pivot. And so that's what we want to get to, is that kind of sophistication. Yeah. But I think a lot of the online commercial good places, they're doing quite incredible stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your interaction with, say, the nurses and that medication administration initiative. What's your feedback loop look like, and how do you communicate the successes of this innovation and then ensure sustainability? And then another thought I had was, you should just go to a nurse's break room and then you'll hear all those feelings.
Yeah, yeah. So we did, and the second I walk in, they say everything's great.
Interesting.
Until
Need a bucket then.
yeah, but we have to develop a relationship in this work, and so we just know that that's the way it goes. And so we show up, and they're resistant, and they also tell us that things are fine, but then we start really bringing them as a part of the process. So what's beautiful about human-centered design is that when it's done right, and we really try hard to do it right, is that it really is honoring the people who participate and bringing them into the practice. So really, really important piece of this. So how do we communicate? A couple of things. There's the official channels that all the nurse executives said, we're going to do this. And they pass on a memo to everybody saying, we're going to do this. Then there's the informal stuff that is far superior. So we've been very fortunate that a lot of our ideas go viral. That's what you want in the world of innovation and design, is that people want your stuff before they're even told they have to do it. And we've been fortunate that that's happened several times. For the stuff that's not viral, or actually either way, viral or not viral, we've also woven human-centered design into how we implement. So we don't just drop off, you're going to start using this sash. Instead, what we do is we drop off a mini design kit that help the nurses on their own and with their nurse manager. What takes us 3 months to do our research, we allow them to do the same thing in like 2 days. And they go and discover the same issues that we discovered, and then we introduce them to what we call a minimum spec. So we also don't say, you have to wear this sash. What we say is, this nurse discovered this idea from a sterile cockpit and developed this sash. This is called the minimum spec. This is what you're going to have to use unless you can make it better. And in fact, one of our hospitals decided that the nurses hated the sash, and so they took the green color, this iridescent green color, and they created a medication tray that's the exact same color. It's really bright. And so when those nurses are walking through their hospital knows that that is the do not interrupt sign. The rest of the hospitals all chose the sash. We don't care if it's a sash or if it's a medication tray. What we care is that you give a signal that the rest of us shouldn't interrupt you. And that's achieving the same thing. So it's more work up front. And so executives don't like this. They don't love that it takes longer to do it this way. But what they do love is that it sticks. And so it's more work up front for longer term value because it sticks later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and now is that a top-down type of strategic implementation where they're blocking out hours for nurses to do this innovation?
Yes. Yeah, they are. And a lot of our innovation dollars go to backfill. So I know that when I get my innovation budget, I don't think you can innovate on the fly. I think if you're going to innovate, that means that you have a serious problem. If you have a serious problem, you have to backfill to get the right people to be able to participate. it is true. We've been able to optimize that for implementation. So where it's 3 months for us to do it, we can get it down to about a day and get people out there in the field and quickly discover some new things about what we already discovered. But it is an upfront cost, but you better believe that it's an innovation. And innovation is new value, and that value should be more than the backfill dollars.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Given the hour, I know there are many questions. I'd invite anybody with questions to come up front and ask Chris directly. I want to thank you for a
Thank you.
fantastic and inspirational talk, and for joining us today, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.